but we could definitely stand to learn a lot from professionals.
Wow. Kurt and I both laugh at that immediately. But
I love it. I knew you guys would. I love it. Oh, it's so perfect.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Back Ups.
All right.
Hey, what's up, world? This is Timbo B. Davis, and I coach football, and that is
Connor B. Feckley.
And what do you do?
And I coach football.
And that's convenient because this is a podcast about football. But hey, today we have a super awesome group of guests. This is our first 2 guest interview. We're excited about it. But we got the sports guys, local legends in the sport community here in Anchorage, Alaska. And we are honored to have them on the show. We got Haider and Matt Nevala. I almost called you Maggie.
I know. I don't know why that's there.
And typo. But yeah, guys, welcome to the show. Kurt, we'll start with you. Tell us a little bit about your experience in Alaska, your life story, if you will. What you got?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I'm an athlete that found out that there was an end to the road to athleticism and competition and stuff like that, and wanted to stay in the game. So after I played a year and a half of college baseball, I wanted to stay involved in sports, and we always really respected, and this is back in central Minnesota, we always really respected our local play-by-play guy. In fact, we loved him because he broadcast our games, and he got excited about us, and we thought he was the coolest thing. And so what I started doing is I'd go out to a high school football game on a Friday night, he'd give me $10, and I would call in to the radio station a report, a 30-second, just like, you hear on the networks now. That's what I would do. Call in at halftime, call in after the game. I'd take my $10 and go home. It was great. There came a time in my life where I really didn't feel like working in a factory was a really cool thing, because I kind of flunked out of college. I ran out of eligibility, and once the beer and the baseball was done, I had nothing. And so I thought, well, what would be an interesting and fun thing to do? And then I thought about this radio thing. So I kind of got involved that way. Next thing you know, I went to a broadcasting school in Minneapolis for a short time. Met a gal there. We got along famously. Her family was in Alaska. She said, hey, why don't you come up to Alaska? This was back in 1983. She said, why don't you come up to Alaska for the summer, and then we'll come back down and go to school. Okay, I'd never been any further west than Rapid City, South Dakota before then. And so I thought, hey, what a great adventure. So we got into her car, we drove off, saw mountains for the first time. I saw the ocean for the first time. I drove the Alaska Highway. And the next thing you know, I'm laying on a couch in Soldotna, Alaska at midnight. The sun's coming through the window, and I'm thinking, where the hell am I?
Sounds about right.
So then it came a time where I needed to do something for the summer. I needed to get a job. I was going to try out for the Peninsula Oilers at the time, but I had to make a few bucks. And so I had a choice of 2 things, either sliming fish at the cannery, or the radio station was looking for a copywriter. And I thought, well, this is kind of in line with what I'm doing. So I applied at the radio station, got the job there, and never looked back. And so the next thing you know, I'm climbing the ladder there at KSRM in Soldotna. After the first year, we already had a sports guy there. So after the first year, then I finally got my opportunity. And I remember broadcasting at the old Soldotna grass and dirt field, and having it to go from there, football into basketball, not so much hockey at the time. And then during the summer, after a failed tryout with the Oilers, because they said I had a great arm, a great glove, and a noodle bat, which is probably the opposite of how I would have described myself. Then I realized that the competitive side of old Kurt playing baseball was pretty much over at that point. Played some town ball in Minnesota, and we had an amateur team in the Anchorage Adult League for a little while. John Kennedy, some of the other guys from down there on the peninsula, we all got together and played a couple of summers of baseball. But getting back to the broadcasting thing, then next thing you know, I become the voice of the Oilers and ran with that for a few years. Just kept broadcasting and built on that. Quickly moving ahead, 1988, got a little big for my britches and went to Minneapolis, worked a year there. Had a son. I married the gal, by the way, who I came up with. Came back from Minneapolis and then worked for a while once again. Went back to school and such. And then in 1996, I was on my way home from Anchorage, doing some basketball, I think, and I heard Tom Miller, who was the voice of the Seawolves hockey at the time, giving they had lost, and so their season was done. He was kind of giving a farewell, and I thought, what the hell? So I called him the next day. I said, Tom, what's up? Tom says, well, I'm taking off. He says, I'm leaving. And I said, well, Tom, I'll not have to push you out the door or anything like that, but if someone were interested, what should someone do? He said, get your tape and resume up here to Anchorage as soon as you can. So I did that, negotiated with them over the summer, and so in the fall of 96, moved to Anchorage. I was the voice of both Seawolf hockey and basketball that first year. One of the basketball games I called was Syracuse against Kentucky. Rick Pitino and Jim Boeheim and that whole crew. Yeah, and so I think I'm giving you a little bit more than what you bargained for here, but suffice it to say, I got 25 years in with UAA hockey, 2 years with the Alaska Aces, and here I am now. So there you go.
That's, first of all, there's so much there. That's so awesome. I love that you played adult league baseball up here. Yeah. I would like to think I'm one of the few Tommy John survivors in the Anchorage Adult Baseball League myself. So that hit me right. That was awesome to hear that.
Well, let me tell you a little bit about my age. One of the really good players in the league at that time was Ken Wooster.
Oh, Kenny. Yeah. If he's not a fan of the show, I'm sure he's out there cheering some. I love Kenny Wooster. He is
he was a lanky pitcher at the time. Yeah. And one more quick note on that: they had each year they had an all-star get together for the adult league to play against the Bucks. And so John Kennedy and I came up and played at Mulcahy against the Bucks, and I got to hit against Brooks Kieschnick,
who ended up great.
First round draft pick. Brooks Kieschnick, and I got my first look at what a hellacious slider looks like. Oh my God! Because I had the count 2-0, and next thing you know, I'm striking out on 3-2, looking at a ball diving out across the plate, something I would never swing at, and it was a called strike.
Oh, I love it. That's good. Those adult league all-star games are pretty cool. But I digress. That's awesome. The baseball. I love the journey from athlete to broadcaster and the competitive element that keeping you in there. That's super cool. Matt, tell us a little bit about your
It's actually funny. My first thought that Kurt and I are more kindred spirits than we've ever really discussed, because I was fortunate enough to get a year of junior college baseball in back in 1992, as I always like to, the pride of Kalamazoo Valley Community College, but grew up in West Michigan, Kalamazoo, halfway between Chicago and Detroit, hence why you see me wearing Cubs gear and mostly Michigan stuff most of the time. And my track was a little different. It was sort of decided for me through some mutual friends. This person knew this person who happened to know the affectionate term I've used for years when we used to have the prep page at the Anchorage Daily News, the prep czar. Well, Kalamazoo's prep czar went through all these people, found out who I was, and kind of through my sister and some friends. And at 15, I got hired into their newsroom to be there from like 6 o'clock to 11 at night. This is back in the day when, a Tuesday night or a Friday night basketball in the Kalamazoo area would be 50, 60 high schools within this, 50-mile radius of the town that would stretch all the way to Lake Michigan, over to Jackson, maybe in that part of the state, in that part of the state. And that kind of started it for me. So it was the story I always like to tell. I started kind of my sophomore year in high school, junior, senior, gave up most of my Friday nights, didn't go to a lot of dances. I was kind of learning that business, learning the importance of print journalism, learning the importance of storytelling, to the point where I always thought I was learning more doing that than I was in the classroom, cut to my dad being my senior year journalism teacher. And to this day, we joke about him giving me a B+ as a senior in journalism because he never thought I would mount to anything. 30 years later, I'm still dabbling in it and kind of carved out a nice little niche for myself. But started at Kalamazoo paper when I was young, parlayed that after graduation, took a job at a small newspaper up in Central Michigan. But this is where the Alaska connection comes in, and it was a girl. Met Kristen Melican, who teaches at Diamond, and she coached the what equivalent to Williamsport, but this was for 16 to 18-year-old girls at the time, 1995. This is the first time any Alaskan Little League team of any shape or form made it this far. Advanced the Softball World Series in Kalamazoo. For years, we had been families in my neck of the woods had hosted kids, and I'd been around the tournament, helped with the newspaper coverage of it. It was used to be fun. A team would come in from California and need some more help. I'd maybe make an extra $100 doing that. Met her that summer '95. We spent like 4 days together. She got back up here, signed on with the school district, got her job, and I didn't really like having to cover JV cross country meets as important as everything else. Moved up here, kind of worked my way and people person kind of thing. Got on the Daily News staff in '96 and stayed on it full bore for about a decade. Then hung around for a little bit, did some educational outreach, and then that's when the business changed. And maybe the importance of storytelling and having these relationships haven't gone away. But as Kurt and I almost touch on almost every episode of the Sports Guys, became apparent people were more and more unwilling to pay for this material. So I was given a big fat check to go away. This was back in 2008. These days, people aren't given those big fat checks to go away. But one thing I've taken from that experience in this, whatever it's been, 10-ish years since, even more, is the building the relationships and the storytelling, and whether I'm doing it on the radio with Kurt, either at UA hockey games or on the Saturday after mornings when we're doing it, or I get called out of the bullpen to go cover Division II state hockey championship like I did in Wasilla on Saturday. I've always really grown into and appreciated the work that goes into it from guys like you, and then the ability to get to grab that kid and kind of take a snippet of his life and share it with people. And I've always kind of been motivated to tell people stories that weren't going to get anywhere else. So, and let's see, married to Kristen it'll be 22 years in July, and our daughters are 16 and 12. And, I don't know if it's a success story, but it's a fun one. That's for sure. It never gets old.
I love it. That is actually a really great story. Little League World Series with softball, combined to a marriage, and here you are. And that is really good. I got to ask you guys, the big mission we have on the show is helping the community, specifically the coaching community. That's probably the majority of the people that listen around the U.S. but specifically Alaska. You talk about telling stories, and you talk about telling your stories. Can you guys tell us a little bit about tips you would have on how this medium, you're talking about free medium, how we can actually help affect change in the community through platforms like this?
I guess with me, I still am working on the struggle of modern day technology, as Nevala would love to tell you. Terrestrial.
You even have problems with the older technology, like the board in the studios. That's pretty antiquated to you sometimes. I don't know, but I digress.
Well, sometimes my cassette recorder gets gummed up, and I can't make heads or tails of that. But getting used to the technology is one of my big challenges. And I've always been one who, I'll try this stuff out. I'll try to do the best that I can with it. I've always gone back, though, to, terrestrial radio is where I grew up in. It's what I learned. And what by that, I mean your AM, FM radio, the one that you have in your vehicle, the one that you may have on in your kitchen or in your house somewhere. That I feel is rock solid as ever, even though others might say no, not so much with the proliferation of digital and all that. But as I learn the digital platforms a little bit more and I see the reach that it has, in fact, I was completely blown away when I came upon my 700th game that I did for UIA 2-3 years ago. And someone said, and honestly, I checked my ego in this business at the door a long time ago, because you hang on to that, you're just going to be an ass. And I never wanted to be an ass. But someone said, you should tell somebody about it. It's 700 games. That's pretty significant. And you should put that on social media. Well, I've never been a social media guy, never been that guy. That's why I got Nevala. He's the social media guy.
I'm the social media old guy. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. So anyway, we put that out there, the 700 thing. And then UA Sports Information Department posted something as well. I was blown away by the reach. I was getting messages from across the country of hockey interested people saying, congrats on 700. That's great. I wasn't looking for the adulation. I wasn't looking for the pat on the back. In fact, I wasn't even looking to publicize the damn thing, but it got out there and the reach was incredible. So I guess what I underestimated, and now that I have a little bit better appreciation for, is the tentacles, the way that the social media can find people and in areas that you never could with terrestrial radio. Your radio station only broadcasts so far and so many miles. I can get KFQD to Denali Park, and that's about it. And down on the Homer Spit, you can get it, but you can't get it in Washington State. You can't get it unless you go on the internet and modern technology. And the reach of social media blew me away. And so I can't say that I've embraced it and run with it, but I have embraced the idea of it, and I see its potential and I see its power. You guys, all of us, we can all get on the internet, and the next thing you know, we're talking with people all over the place. We can be a sportscaster that way. Is it legit? Yeah. Is it as cool? No. And the reason I say that is because I'm an old timer and I had to earn my stripes. I had to, number one, I did the practical stuff, the real life stuff at a very young age, went to school for it for a while. Once I got to a radio station, I had to make my way up a ladder. I had to go start in overnights. Then I would go to evenings. And then if you were lucky, you'd get late afternoons, so on and so forth. There's a ladder to climb. That ladder is no longer there. In radio, the staffs are so small now, so small. It's like my boss is going on vacation next week. I can't get sick. I there's no alternative. I have to be there. And again, I did, to use the term mentioned earlier, I digress. Getting back to what you said, radio, I still feel radio has a place. As long as there are cars that run up and down the road with a radio in them, I'm going to be heard. Matt and I got Seawolf Hockey back on the radio, not only just on digital and not only on the internet, but we got it back on terrestrial radio last year, and we reach a lot of people. You can turn that knob and boom, there you are. You don't have to be within reach of the internet. You don't have to do this. You don't have to do that.
Obviously, Kurt and I have done the Sports Guys show Saturday mornings, 11 a.m. on CBS Sports 590, by the way. Plug. And at first, he would send me MP3s of it. Then I would then go to SoundCloud, create an URL and post that. And now we've kind of upped our ante a little bit and put it on the actual radio station's website and try to draw traffic there. So we're mindful of kind of the new medium and the new ways of reaching people. We really haven't taken any time to study what kind of footprint we've made or anything like that. But in my mind, it's doing whatever limited. I mean, it's pretty simple to do all this. Whatever we can to gain that footing, to get those new fans, to get those people listening. Kurt and I have a pretty good idea that a lot of our friends are listening on Saturdays when we do it live, but in some sense or we bring in a team or an athlete, and all of a sudden their family figures out that we're doing this thing and we're added to the pile of, I'll just call it kind of self-promotion. But credit to Tim, you've done a good job with always being open and honest, and whether that's my role as a print journalist or digital journalist, whatever, writing words, typing things, versus this medium of talking or discussion or hot takes or anything like that. I guess I'd say from a community standpoint, often tell the kids you're working with and those families, openness is what gets you not notoriety, but gets you kind of to those next steps, I think. We're in today's day and age, we see so many people that try to button up or try to hide the truth might be a little bit too drastic, but don't see the benefits of just being honest, being open. Obviously, I've dealt in sports most of my life, so that meant being fun or funny. That's always been kind of the way I've gone, but I've had to deal with some very serious issues and in sadder moments, talk to families when the unfortunate accident or somebody was sick and died by disease, and people talk about us lefty libby libs in the media have all this bias. Well, I have a bias in the sense that I get upset if I'm talking to the Opitsky family. We just lost John, a great coach, great West High guy. Recently, I got to know him, and this kind of brings me back home. My daughter started in the Anchorage West League down there at Jade Park, and John I think he figured out early on that Kristen and myself had a better resume, kind of came from a real place. So we started doing coach pitch, and I was sitting on the old bucket aiming instead of pitching. Yeah. Just a real openness to it and not being afraid to be honest. I know it sounds crazy, but it just here in Anchorage, the best relationships and the best stories I've been able to tell are the ones that come out of real places or again, a lot of jokes, a lot of fun. John Jessen, our now retired coach at Bartlett, he was a comedy show, and I knew to play the straight man to his pulling out whatever kind of pun or whatever thing I could pull out of him. It was a little bit of a setup that maybe we wouldn't see on the national level. I don't think, Nick Saban's buddying up as much as with his beat writers as maybe I had the good fortune. A different market, different animal than, covering high school sports or doing national stuff. But I just implore people and communities to just be open with themselves and honest and know they have interesting things to share and build, and not just kind of go on the normal platitudes and cliches and put yourself out there.
I love that. Kurt, you mentioned you have to earn your stripes. You have to go up. And Matt, you're talking about, what I'm hearing are themes of journalism and storytelling. They haven't changed. No. And I think if we have other coaches that are listening to this who are starting their own podcast or doing their thing, I love the idea of there is a certain level of look at what people have done before and respect the wisdom that comes from that. And then when it comes to change, I'm hearing you guys say, tell honest stories, be open and tell honest stories in sports. And as a coach, I'll tell you what, it's super easy for me to give that other coaching staff's really good and our kids work really hard and, we're going to play really good on Friday night. It's going to be a show for the community. When deep down inside, I'm probably thinking like, screw that guy or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. But you know what? Sometimes you have to do that. Okay. And we get that as sportscasters and such. We know the game. I learned from Ward Romans, who's now over at Grace Christian. He was at Nikiski, and his brother is a real good coach up in Fairbanks in the day too. And anyway, I learned how to deal with coach speak back then, because I knew whenever Ward said something about the other team that they were well coached, I knew that he had nothing good to say about that team, and he couldn't think of anything else. No, and you don't have to. you don't have to, pour your heart out. I know I get what you're saying, but, there are times where you're focused, man. And I get that. You got a game, you got a team to prepare for this game. You don't have a lot of time for the media. We appreciate whatever you give us. And then afterwards, we also know the NCAA recognized that there was a 10-minute cooling off period, that you guys just were in the heat of battle. For crying out loud, give you some time to collect your thoughts, because we're going to be asking questions about why'd you do this? How'd you do that? What were you thinking there? And you are wound up. You don't have time to think about all the good answers you're going to give us. So we understand that there's a little bit of, kind of cat and mouse, if you will. But I think what Matt is saying is that maybe in more of a sit down situation, maybe not so much in a game situation, but in a sit down, know that the sportscaster or the interviewer isn't necessarily out to get you unless he's out to get you, the trust thing too. And that is one of the things that Matt and I'm sure have paralleled in our careers, is that we've been in this long enough where coaches, and we've been in this area long enough where coaches somewhat know us and somewhat trust us. They know we're not going to throw them under the bus. If we do, we're not going to last long, and we're going to hear about it. So I think that we're careful with the questions we ask. We're also thoughtful about that. We're not going to rip you new one, because we have professional standards. We're professionals. We know how to do that. And I guess as coaches, all we ask, and all we can ask for, is a few minutes of your time, and we appreciate that no matter what you can give us. There was a night, I think you guys fell in the championship game. Was that rainy night at Mulcahy? And you just lost a freaking state championship game, but yet you took time and gave me thoughtful answers to questions that I asked. Those are the types of things that we really appreciate.
Let me just jump on that, because that is, of course, examples like that are what then build the character that then, whether it's somebody who happens to hear Kurt's 30-minute sportscast on a Thursday morning, or happens to read my story in the paper or online the next day, and then sees that you're willing to, in a sour moment, step up and I like to say, especially with high school athletics, be the adult, be the professional educator, and answer what needed to be answered, and as opposed to you're not the kid on the team. The kids on the team I get. And a few times, I grabbed a kid who lost that hockey game, Palmer and Homer, last Saturday. The two kids left on the ice were like bowing their sticks on their knees and pretty upset, but the rest of the Palmer kids all took off, and I wanted to get at least a Palmer voice. I'm worldly enough now to step up to that kid, and Patrick, I think it was his name. Hey, I know this time really stinks, but just kind of, why are you still out here? Why in your mind are you making a point of watching these guys celebrate on the other end of the ice? Because that's going to elicit a real human emotion that I hopefully can relay to readers. And as far as you guys go, when and if another kid sees that, or I have to think about like growing the brand. In Tim's case, somebody who lives over near us over here by Lake Hood or whatever goes, well, that football coach over at West seems really knows what he's doing. Maybe I'll catch a game. Maybe I'll kick in $30 for the little plastic card things you guys sell for fun rate or whatever. And that can't be lost on people, the reality of kind of what's needed. In anytime you get a fan, you might as well take advantage of that.
You guys bring up a lot of good points, and like you said, in how you go about interviewing with players post game or doing sit down stuff. What kind of advice would you guys maybe give to young players that you maybe wish, that for interviews, that things that they could know that could help them, for those post game interviews? What's
so funny to me these days is it's never lost on me almost immediately, because so many thoughts are going through your head. I really put it on myself to ask pointed questions, not ones that are, how did it feel out there? Or what was, but what exactly went through your mind when that goal went in, or you scored that touchdown, and that 30 seconds afterwards before everyone, there has to be a thought that goes through your head. So I approach it as try to get in that kid's helmet, so to speak, elicit real emotion. And so I hope kids don't get, I guess what I was first joking about was kids are like, what? The Daily News? What is that? So what? A newspaper? I don't even know what that is. Are those 8-track tapes too, or what? Yeah,
that's funny you say that, because I was going to say, even when I was in school, we used to love it. As soon as the news showed up, the post game, it was just like everyone wanted to get a chance to get in there. So
and there's some of that, as you'll see on the sidelines with me, and I think that's part of having been around for a couple decades.
Yeah,
that those, I'll grab the kid, and I'm big on grabbing. Maybe not the star of the game, but the third star of the game. Especially now that I only do it once in a while and don't go to games every single day or every single week, that offensive guard and just having them speak to the offensive game plan or whatever. And it always ends up, because the running back always has to give the plug to the hey, I really got to thank my line. They really worked and really opened some holes and I just ran through them. Okay, good. But I guess.
Wow, you big timer, you. I'll tell you what, you can grab those third stringers all day long. I'm going to take the game star, and you can go off and into the corner and talk to that third stringer. I'm going to let that star running back thank his lineman. I'm going to let that quarterback say thank you very much for the protection. You can go over and talk to all those guys all you want, and I'm going to get the ratings, and you are not.
Kurt and I just had this discussion yesterday about how I'm still a little bit more, I don't want to say ferocious, but I'm willing to muck it up a little more than Kurt is, in terms of, I'm not going to embarrass a 16-year-old kid or anything like that, but today, you mentioned like UA sports and the UA sports world going on. And just today here on, Thursday, the 25th, it was announced that the hockey program and the gymnastics program will get an extension on this fundraising. And, we will read tonight or we'll read tomorrow about kind of the positivity of that. We feel really good about that. And but someone has to ask the questions that need to be asked. Now, whether, case in point, you get someone in the University of Alaska Anchorage, point blank, I don't know if I'll ever get to answer this or get this answered or ask it. Is this something you want the school to have? Forget whether they raise $3 million or not. Yes or no, Mr. Athletic Director, Mr. Student, Chancellor, yes or no, is this something you want? Because I think the public wants to know. And Kurt and I have discussed being a little trepidatious on this, because we occasionally get paid by these entities. So how many toes do you want to step on? And the same thing kind of goes for you guys in the high school programs. I mean, again, we're not Woodward and Bernstein. This isn't, Watergate stuff, and it's not that important, but real people have real questions, and they aren't always going to be touchy-feely kind of things. So I guess word of advice to get back to that, kids to know, I'm just so used to now, because I go to 1 or 2 games a year, maybe I just go to this hockey game last weekend. These kids haven't seen me before. They don't know what the newspaper is or even really care. And to immediately make them feel comfortable. And to that end, I mean, that's why when a West High football season or South High or whatever, I mean, I try to at least get out there, and so does Kurt. We roam the sidelines. We try to be seen by more than just the adults and get to know these kids a little bit. And then hopefully there's a comfort level when you approach them and they figure out, hey, it's not just that guy that's sometimes on the radio or is that byline that my parents tell me is in the newspaper, because I don't see it. But, you create a trust. And so I trust you because I'm approaching you with questions. You can trust me because I'm going to do my job to the best of my ability, because I enjoy doing that.
What is the media's role? Is it just to report? Are we asking those tough questions? How can media help the community one way or the other figure out what it wants?
It's not the media's job to cheerlead. I learned the difference between that when I worked for the Aces, because I was paid to cheerlead, and I had the toughest time with that because I had been in journalism so long. I'd been a sportscaster for so long, trying to keep it as even keel as possible. People used to get upset with me because I'd get excited about another team's goal. I mean, it was like Minnesota had this kid one year, Thomas Vanek, that scored a goal that was unbelievable, and I made it sound unbelievable. another example, we were on the road at Minnesota, and there's this kid that scored the hat trick. I think his name is Troy Riddle. And at the end of my
race,
and I said, Troy Riddle, you are awesome, and this is, it made national because here was the visiting or the opposite sportscaster getting all jazzed up about that. Journalism in its purest form is reporting, I think, and finding the facts and reporting the facts as is without any biases. That is a noble thing to go after. There are going to be inherent biases. In my own, I can only speak to where I've been, and that is that during most of the years that I've done broadcasting for UIA, I was employed by the radio station and not by the university. People think that, it's because I've always been doing UIA stuff that the university, I am employed by them. I am not. I always tried to give a fair accounting of the game, a description of the game. I get excited for my team, absolutely. But if the other team did something well, I would be sure to tell people that. And the referees have nothing to do with it. This and that had nothing to do with it. I am telling you what I'm seeing and giving you the feel of the arena. And there are different approaches with play-by-play too. I mean, there have been a couple of guys who've gone through town here with the Aces that were numbers guys and very matter-of-fact guys and this and that. And I am not that. I am more of I want you to close your eyes and be able to feel like you're in the arena. I'm going to tell you about what's happening out to the side. I'm going to give you the colors with the words that I'm saying. I'm not saying that my way is right. I'm not saying their way is right. That's just the way I approach it. So getting back to the original thing, the media reports, and I think that the bias comes in that we live here. And we want to see good things happen to the good people that we know. The media reports and employees of the entity like the Aces, they cheerlead. Okay, how many times have you heard, well, your Aces are going to be in Kalamazoo next weekend. Your Aces. And I never would say that about Seawolves. Why? Because I feel that the moment I say your Aces or your Seawolves, I'm alienating part of my audience because they're not theirs. They don't look at it as their team, Am I talking to this handful of rabid fans? Maybe so. Maybe management wants me to do that. Maybe the owners want me to do that. I found that incredibly difficult. It took me a long time to get over that hump, and I don't know if I ever really did.
I would say the role of the media is to ask the questions that's on your mind, that when you're having a beer at the crossroads with your buddies, I take that and ask that in the most professional, direct way. And then if you say, I've always said, if you say the sky is brown, I can't write a story or go on the radio and say that the sky is orange. You said it was brown. So that's all I can do. That's what I can do. But I can go into the situation and ask the pointed, direct questions.
One of the things that Matt and I are different, and that is our venue, our vehicle, if you will, and that is with me with radio, and while I was in TV as well, it's immediacy. It's now. It's going. It's happening. It's right now. So it's kind of like social media. It's now. It's now. It's happening now. I've always told Doyle Woody when he was around, I said, Doyle, you know what? I don't know how you do it. He says, because whatever you put down there on the paper is there forever. If I say something, it can go in one person's ear and out the other, and it's out into the ether, and it's gone forever. But with print, it's printed. And people can go back and refer to that over and over again. And that's why I respect Nevs and Doyle and Beth and the folks that do the print media thing, because I can have a verbal foible and it'll be there and gone. a printed foible is there forever, and there's no saying, oops, no, I didn't mean to say that. It's like, it's there and there it is. And I think there's a certain pressure that comes along with that. And I think someone like Matt, someone like Doyle and Beth, they have honed their craft to the point where they recognize that, and they recognize what, how to present the questions, how to present the information that they glean from their subject truthfully. I don't, with me, I had cassette tapes, and I had mini discs, and I had this and that, where I could go back and listen to the interview I did, and I can pull it back out word by word if I needed to type it out or print it out. I've seen Doyle and I've seen Matt do the same thing with a stenographer's notebook. A long quote that ended up being just this big, on their notes. But yet when they wrote the story, there it was, as big as life and just as accurate as if the person just said it. And that is an amazing talent in that. So, but the sincerity of the answers that you give, if the reporter is good, and the readers and the listeners can hear that, and they get it.
Doyle was the original embedded journalist at West Anchorage High School. He came and spent a week with us at practice one week, and good old, he asked, I was 28, 29, and I grew up reading his stuff, but I didn't really know the game. Like, I didn't understand, like, what is he supposed to be seeing right now or writing about, and I'll tell you what, it was really cool to see good old Yarmir Blogger on our sideline for the course of pretty much a season. It felt like he was there for a week of practice, there every game day. And son of a gun, I miss that dude on our sidelines. He every now and then, when I called a good play, I'd make sure I'd walk over to him, or maybe it's Sakaitis with a camera, and be like, yo, I got this one. Just super arrogant. And then we get sacked for like 5 yards, and Doyle would be like, great job, coach.
Good job. Doyle's still owner of the greatest Twitter handle of all time, but he did not make that up. That credit goes to a former Daily News reporter and great friend Josh Niva came up with that tag of Yarmer Blogger. And yeah, M Nevala 9 does not match at all with what I do on social media. But I was struck with the idea, and let me just see if I collect my thoughts. Oh, you mentioned, like, okay, the difference between the kind of the spoken word versus the printed word or archived word. One thing that I'm notorious for, and whether it's just the nerd in me that I've become as I got older or not, I mean, I make a point of learning the history, and especially in kind of this part-time role that I come in at the end and I do the playoffs and I do the first National Bowl title game or the first National Cup hockey game or the state basketball. I try to then study up enough to know, I just go back to the most frequent one, that Division II was the 25th version, and kind of make that's a plug. I mean, I think live in that history, and so those kids know, hey, I played in the 25th version of this game, or a couple years ago when East played West in the final, and I talked to Donnie Winchester, and we got the precise dates of when the first. Now again, why do I care that these teams played in 1962? Some people will say that, but to me, that makes it even more special, even more grand. Especially for a young state like this is, and whether we have a little brother complex, we pretend we don't, but in a lot of ways, I think that Alaska does. It can't compare to Texas high school football, or I'm from the state of Michigan, so when state basketball rolls around, and they always played those games in the Palace of Auburn Hills, where the Pistons played, or on Michigan State's campus, or football games at the home of the Detroit Lions, which are kind of a pro football team, but
every now and then.
But and unfortunately, we don't have that panache yet. So I try to add it through history and through. Yeah, Wes, you got some work cut out for you. You've lost the last 6 of the last 7 in this series. Now you guys were in elementary school when this started, but there's something there, and that lends to the credibility of drawing what we said, that honesty out of people, is the better prepared I can be, and the more kind of stat nerddom I can have at the ready. I think it eases up a lot of the relationships with other people. So,
well, it also speaks to your investment in what you're doing and your inevitable credibility. Are you credible writing this, or can anybody just write this? No, you are invested in this because you've gone through the work to do some research and make sure that you have a solid base with which to write on. And that, I think, makes all the difference. I mean, anyone can go to a game and say, yeah, I saw so-and-so make a basket. Yeah, he felt really good about it afterwards, blah, blah, blah. But if you've got some different context, and then the thing that I like too about that is the storytelling aspect, that we don't have that as much in radio, but in print and such, and in certain XTV sports stations, the TV stations that used to do sports and cut it twice, they used to do stories that were more of a storytelling thing, something that was not the box score and not the highlights, but an aspect of the game that is not trivial, but interesting. What is just a little bit different about that? Or what about that person who scored the winning touchdown? Oh, he's got a little bit of a background there. His dad was a pro football player, or maybe his mom was a great athlete. There's little things, little windows that open up so much more in the story than just the score and who got the winning goal, that type of thing. That's what makes the writing really interesting, I think, is some of the little sidelights and sidebars, and the work that you put in, Nevs, and other writers put in to doing some of that research ahead of time, so that you can insert that in just the right place in the story where it all kind of ties together and it tells a story from beginning to end.
As an aside, I'll say this too. The quickly football conference, or Alaska football, is in a bit of a unique situation, because it was just Mike Van Alsden back then, and Doyle and Danny Marr. They started this where, hey, we're the statisticians. We're on the sidelines. You rushed for 170 yards because I kept it right here. But also, and why I think the sports community here was spoiled for the greater run of my time at the Daily News, because the quantity and the quality was so great, is what I still do, except nowadays if it rains or it's too cold, I will limp out and sit up there with Brian Mercer up in the stand, the press box. But one thing that I think is lost on a lot of people that I've taken advantage of so many times is to be able to hear that exchange, whether Tim said something to his quarterback and I overheard it, and obviously it's for public consumption because it's, I'm not going to bury anyone, or when I kind of can overhear something these kids are talking about, and somehow they talked about the math test they took earlier that day, and so said something, and I hear it in passing. 2 hours later, when I grab you after the game, I'm going to specifically go, hey, when I hear about that math test and what was so special about it, and that's something no one's going to get. That kid knew it. That makes for a fun story. And then you intertwine all the stuff that's necessary, the scores and the this and the that, but also the human element. And I don't know, Tim, I don't think I've ever mentioned to you, that is unique to Alaska, because I wasn't doing that in Michigan when I was covering high school football. I just sat up in the press box and that was it.
That's because they didn't let you on the sidelines, because you listen to crap like that. You're not supposed to be sitting there eavesdropping on kids on the sideline. What the hell are you doing down there? You're trolling for Gatorade, and you're getting the quotes from the kids that really don't matter. You want to know who's dating who and why they broke up with them, and then that's going to come up in a post-game interview. Give me a break.
Yeah, that's why I was
going to say.
Are you going to tell him the Doyle story?
Yeah, I was going to say.
Connor's got a good Doyle story. Maybe the best.
Going off the Doyle story, and
I know this
matter what you said. What you said earlier about the comfortability factor of everything. Doyle, I had a chance to be. I hadn't played quarterback back in the when I played. In him being around West so much, I had got that comfortability factor with him. And I remember going into my junior year, he approached me before one of our games, and like I said, and he comes up to me, and the first thing I said is, "Hey, can I ask you a question?" and he was, kind of drawn back by it. And I wanted to ask a girl out to a school dance, through the newspaper, and he ate it up. I don't even know if he ended up asking me any questions. He just, about the game. He just wanted to know how he could help, fulfill this request that I had asked of him. And it's like I said, it's something that we still joke about today, via Twitter and stuff like that. But you said just that relationship we were able to build, and then what came out of it afterwards, obviously, it was the talk of the town for helping me set that up. So it was pretty awesome.
Yeah, that's one of the advantages of being a small community, or when I say just high school sports, I mean it in the most positive, right manner, because there's instances like that. Because going back to kind of what we touched on, building communities and stuff, I mean, we've seen it nationwide, worldwide, even locally. I mean, we can talk about the Alaska legislature down in Juneau forever, but you never see or never get the sense that as hard as a James Brooks works for the Daily News or Matt Buxton for the Alaska, what is it called, the Midnight Sun or whatever, that blog, and these people don't get to take the time to sit down and hash over why they go, someone stands at a podium, they give a little soliloquy, and boom, that's it. And that's unfortunately why a lot of our business isn't nearly as fun as it used to be, is because, and this stems back to people stopped paying for it. And when that happened, the critical aspect of it and holding people's feet to the fire, you can't say that's being achieved because you listened to your favorite shout show, whether political or sports wise that day. It just reaffirmed what you already knew and suspected. And it's really unfortunate. It'd be so much fun to get to see these people on camera, on record, explain why. And if we can get back to a society where people view the value of that and are willing to dish out 30 cents a page. I always said that if newspapers would have in 1997 just started charging 3 cents a page view, and then you got a bill at the end of the month for whatever, that the initial blip would have happened. Everyone would have been angry. We would have known this is material that is worth paying for, and today's day and age wouldn't be shout shows and clicks and all that. It'd be putting people that deserve to be uncomfortable in uncomfortable situations. And we need more of that. So when I do see it here locally, I try to trumpet it and give credit where credit is due. Just don't ever lose sight of what's missing. It's not that reporter's bias or that the Daily News is this or Fox News is that. It's that they're just doing what they have to do to kind of get that paycheck every 2 weeks, just like everybody else. And unfortunately, that's what all this is transformed into. There was a time where I kind of almost, I didn't have the expenses I had then, but every 2 weeks they gave me a check when I was 17 years old to be typing up tennis scores or whatever it was. Hey, that's cool. And make an extra trip to the mall this week or what have you. So,
well, gentlemen, we're bumping up on an hour, and I got to ask before we go here. You've both mentioned the fun of sports journalism, and that's what is the funnest or a fun. I don't want to put you on the spot to pick one like as the pinnacle, but what is the funnest memory off the top of your head in sports journalism that you've had up here?
Go ahead, Hines.
With me, it was 2004, the Seawolves qualifying for the WCHA Final Five for the first time when we upset Wisconsin. Wisconsin came in as the big dogs. They knew they were the big dogs. They thought they were the big dogs. John Hill and Keith Morris and Jack Kowal, the Seawolves coaches at the time, looked me in the eye and said, "This is a good matchup." Chris King was a monster in the nets. Curtis Glencross, who went on to the National Hockey League, played so well. The team was so focused. We won the first game. That was it's best 2 out of 3. We won the first game. That was the key, because now all of a sudden Wisconsin realizes that shit.
Editing software. We'll talk about that in a second.
we got to win 2 in a row, and the Seawolves are looking at it. Hey, we just need to win one more game, and we're going. And so we took it to the third game. We beat them. I've never seen a group so excited. That first day at the XL Energy Center in St. Paul, Minnesota, when they got to practice on the NHL rink for the first time, I was sitting on the bench with those guys as they were waiting for the Zamboni to finish up before their morning skate. And they were like kids at Christmas. They were so excited. They were just giddy. And I'll always remember that because I was too. It was the first time that I got to broadcast from a NHL press box in a beautiful brand new building. I'll never forget that. I got a picture on my desk from that. It's always a reminder. And I think that was probably the thing that I look back on, and that was the moment.
Getting to tell a story of a national championship. So the Aces won that first Kelly Cup in 2006. Jack Michael's great line from the depths of eBay to a championship. Knowing that night in Gwinnett, the greater Atlanta, Gwinnett, Georgia, and that night they won. Kimmy Daniels scored a goal shorthanded 5-on-3. I was just all this crazy, but I knew in my head that I was doing something important for the people back home, and so I tried to put myself in their shoes, not so much I'm not ringing a cowbell. I never was. It really wasn't my job to care if they won. I liked these guys. Some of them were my friends. Troy Riddle, that Kurt mentioned earlier, was actually on that team. That was a big moment. Probably the story I enjoy telling is kind of a tangential part of Alaska sports. Lou Friedman, former sports editor, was known for writing books about Alaska sports history or whatever. And he was going to write the quintessential book about the Alaska Baseball League, the Summer Baseball League, all the big leaguers have come through here, draft picks, whatever. Summer '99, the MLB All-Star Game is in Boston at Fenway. My in-laws are from the Wooster area, as I like to say. So I politely asked Beth and Doyle and Lou, and this is a different time. This is still when integrity runs the show, and you're never getting a press pass to go be a fan. Well, I'm traveling 3,000 miles away. Can I get a press pass this time to be a fan? And Beth lets me do it. I get there, and Lou goes, "Hey, I'm working on this book. So is there any chance you can get a question and answer from Randy Johnson, the big unit? He was pitching for the Diamondbacks at the time, and he was the biggest name in baseball besides being the biggest guy. And it was a big thing. He had just recently been traded to Arizona. He was there as an all-star. But the big deal was he had been getting no run support through all this. Like he'd been losing but not giving up much. So big ballroom, all these all-stars are sitting at these tables. The Troy Percivals and Scott Williamsons of the world have nobody around their table. Randy Johnson has, the community of Eagle River surrounding him at this table. And I'm 27-ish, 20. I wasn't a kid, but I wasn't worldly enough to know what the hell I was doing. All these people at peppering with questions. He's so uncomfortable. You could just the quintessential media obligation. How soon can I get out here? Blah, blah, blah. I wait. I hear quiet first. So I say, "Hey, Randy, what do you remember about the Alaska Baseball League in 1982? And silence. Cameras turn at me. People turn at me, pointing at me. Randy kind of gives me like a triple take. Where'd that come from? The people were great. I got hurt pretty early on in the case. I wasn't able to spend as much time there as I had hoped, but it was a pretty good experience. Thanks, see ya, ran as fast as I could and got that. And it was the quote ended up in Lou's book. I got a credit on it and all this stuff. And I tell her that's a story all these years that whenever I go to classrooms or talk to kids, and, Randy Johnson is a big sports name now, but that was kind of the one brush with greatness that I just think it was so funny because not many people would have had the guts to be an ass in that instance, and I just did it. But as soon as I said thanks, I ran out of that room as fast as I could. And it's like, ooh, so there you go.
Oh my God, that is epic. I think we're gonna close it out on that, gentlemen. Thank you so much. Like, I have so much gratitude for you guys.
Yes.
And I do really appreciate the local media community here. It's always treated West fairly, at least the programs I've been a part of, and it's. Again, thank you again, guys.